note. No. I'll try and open it up again, sorry. What's that charity drive? Govardhana Vishnu. Krishna. It's all right. Anyway, I'm going to speak for about 10 or 15 minutes on this particular sloka. And after that, I'm going to read from the Prabhupada Lilamrita, Lifetime in Preparation, because I know last time we didn't do this. Mukunda Maharaj was a little bit sort of miffed at the fact that we didn't mention Prabhupada's leaving Calcutta for the United States. It's quite an epic journey. So I'll read the sloka again. Supreme Lord, Supreme Person of Godhead then said, O Brahma, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you're begging from me has already been granted. So we've all been reading about this actually for the last chapter there, how Lord Brahma was given the two words ta and pa that meant tapasya. So for 100 celestial years he performed his tapasya, which he meditated on the super soul within the heart. And then at the end of that, Krishna finally appeared within his heart. And so here's Krishna manifest, and Lord Brahma finds out what his actual purpose is, that he's there for the purpose of creation. He's Adi Kavya, he's the first born living entity who is in charge of the secondary creation. The primary creation is when Lord Vishnu creates all the different planetary systems, and then it is the business of Lord Brahma to supply all living entities to populate this universe. They're all ready to come out from the body of Lord Vishnu, but they just need bodies. So this in itself is a daunting task, and so Lord Brahma is a little bit bewildered where to start. Not only that, he's sitting on the lotus and he's looking down at the waters of the devastation, and the Govardhana Ocean was the waters of devastation, which obviously are starting to recede a little bit, but they're all choppy, and maybe it's a sort of that seasick feeling that he's getting. And where does he begin? So the Lord is reassuring Lord Brahma, don't worry, you've already done this before, because actually what happens is every day when Lord Brahma goes to sleep and he wakes up again after so many millenniums, you can understand that he's that principal soul that was in the universe that actually went back into the body of Govardhana Vishnu. So as we know, Pralaya, that again and again the universe is created, and again it is annihilated. So when the universe is annihilated, Lord Brahma, well, he's not Lord Brahma, he's the primary living entity, the most intelligent living entity in the universe. He does go back into the body of Vishnu for how many years? It's something like 8,600,000,000,000 years multiplied by, that's 1 day, so you multiply that by 360, and you multiply that by another 100. Got your calculator? So that's how long Lord Brahma is asleep, right? So he's Adi Kavya. When he comes out of the universe, the mats are in there if you're looking for in the cupboard, if you're looking for the mats. I don't know. No, something else. So he's Adi Kavya, so when he comes out, he can't remember much, so he can understand. That is understandable. So then he hears the words tapa. So then when he hears the words tapa, and then the Lord reveals himself, he said, be assured that you've done this before, right? So we're in the 50th year of Lord Brahma, approximately a little bit after 50 years, and he lives 100 years. So he's already created this material universe so many different times. So he's looking for where to begin. So then Krishna reveals himself within his heart. So Prabhupada says the purport here, any person authorised by either the Lord or by his bona fide representative is already blessed. So in this particular case, Lord Brahma is getting direct instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it was very interesting. Prabhupada gave a very interesting analogy in the purport yesterday, where, I don't know if you heard it, but they said there are three modes of material nature, and when they mix with one another they become 9, and when 9 mix together they become 81, and the 81 also become mixed, and ultimately we do not know the delusion which increases and increases. So this is how Prabhupada used to always explain that how we get all the different species of life, just like we have the three modes, goodness, passion and ignorance, and he compares it to the colours. So for those budding artists, we know all the different colours, blue, red and yellow, they're the primary colours. You mix blue and yellow and you get green, and you mix purple, yeah, I gave it away, you mix red and blue and you get purple, and red and yellow is orange. So there you mix those two, you've got 9 different varieties, right? And then of course you mix them and you get 81 varieties. So if you go to the paint shop, you'll see all the different colour charts. You know, you get so many different colours. So in this way it's the same with the modes, goodness, passion and ignorance. But in this particular instance there is a body to accommodate each particular colour, each particular mode. And altogether that adds up to how many? Yes, 8,400,000 different species of life. So we have, of course, we have 400,000 types of human beings alone, but not all of them are on this planet.
Are we the lowest of those 400,000?
Huh?
Are we the lowest?
I don't think so, no. We're just in this human form, and it varies. It's actually sort of fluctuates, because in such a yuga we're situated in the mode of goodness, and we don't we are hardly affected by the different modes of passion and ignorance, because everybody's virtually meditating on Supreme Lord, they go back to Godhead. Of course, the mode of passion starts to creep in the next yuga, which is Treta Yuga, and there's a bit of tinge of passion and goodness, so you know the quality of human life slips down. Of course, Dwapara Yuga, ignorance happens, so mainly it's mode of passion, tinge of ignorance, and then of course in Kali Yuga, Manda Samanda Mataya, it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So it's pretty much the influence of mode of ignorance. At that point in time, the quality of the human being is not as high, so it sort of fluctuates, yeah. So Lord Brahma is entrusted with creating all these different types of species, but he is getting direct instruction from Lord, and then we saw in the second canto how it all began, that he created the progenitors, and then Lord Shiva came out of his forehead, and then after so much creating different manus and progenitors for procreation, what you call prajapatis, and then the prajapatis married different wives, and these wives created not only human beings, but they created so many different other types of species. As you see, it's really fascinating. It's very hard for us to understand, but this is all due to Lord Brahma's creation, and he gave it a lot of thought, just like Prabhu was talking about it Sri Kavacha was just talking about one particular cuttlefish, just one particular species. It's not even, it's nothing. You know, what is a cuttlefish? It's a crustacean, it's not even a fish. But still, it's alive, and it's got all these tentacles which it uses for digesting food. But then when there is a predator coming past, those tentacles actually change colour and it looks like a coral. So even Lord Brahma's given special attention to that design of the cuttlefish. And if you go into the gardens there and you see all the different spiders and the insects crawling around, you'll see the defence mechanism, how they eat and how they actually survive, and the colours, how they camouflage with all the different environment. It's just amazing what to speak of the birds, the beautiful birds that we have, all the parrots and whatever. And what about the human body? It's just like such an intricate machine that no matter how much the scientists try to invent the robot, it's just a poor imitation of the human body. Just like I can see Sajini, just naturally, she got itchy hair, so the hand goes to the head, like that. It's just like you have to program a robot to do that. You know, your hair is itchy, like that. So it's such a beautiful creation by Lord Brahma and all the atoms or whatever. So he is getting the mercy, direct mercy of Krishna. And in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada mentions Arjuna also. He was entrusted work, so he was getting the direct instruction from Krishna as well. And sometimes when you're faced with a daunting task, you really depend upon the mercy of the Lord, because you trust the Lord that what you're doing is for the benefit not only please the Lord but please the humanity at large. Just sometimes the example is given that in the material world we may be very much attached to a governor, a prime minister, president or a king, and we're his personal servant and we enjoy serving that person. We think, well, this person really may need my service, I'm doing very well, and that person says, well, I want you to go and build a prison house now. So you have to go out somewhere and help construct a prison house. And don't worry, just build a prison house, build all the facilities, and then I'll put all the prisoners in there. So it's something that that he might not want to do. He'd rather do the personal service of his superior, but still he has to follow the instructions because he's the most qualified one to. According to his superior is the most qualified one to follow those instructions and carry on that work. So Krishna assured Arjuna that even though it is a very daunting task that he's facing as a warrior, that he has to fight with all his relatives, even his maternal grandfather and his guru and whatever, just because of the nature of his activities, he should carry on that duty just to carry out the discharge of religious principles and help Krishna establish that Dharma, Paritranaya Sadnam Vinasya Chatuskritam Dharma Samstapnataye Sambhavani Yuga. Krishna says whenever there's a rise in religious principles, which was occurring with the Kuru dynasty, so Krishna was there to straighten it out, and Arjuna had to do that work. So when Arjuna completely surrendered to Krishna, then the victory was there. It's like Prabhupada said, the victory was already arranged. It was there for him. Do you want it? Do you want it? So sometimes it's like that with us too, that the movement, Lord Chaitanya has predicted that this movement is going to spread to every town and village in this whole world, and it's going to be Yuga Dharma in this age of Kali, and there's a special age now. So do we want to be a part of this? Do we want it? It's already going to happen, but we can be a part of this, and then we can be successful and serve the Lord, be very pleasing to the Lord. So how does this happen? This comes in the third way. So Arjuna and Lord Brahma of taking complete instruction from Krishna, so they have that benefit. But in our case, it's like Prabhupada says in the first line here, person authorized by the Lord, by his bona fide representative, is already blessed, or by his bona fide representative. So we are in the disciplic succession. So our mission is to follow the instruction of the authorities in the disciplic succession. And of course that goes back to Lord Brahma. So by following that, then we actually are connected to Krishna by following the instructions of the spiritual master. So the prime example, of course, is Srila Prabhupada, who was told by his spiritual master, it is your mission to go and spread Krishna consciousness to the Western world. One sentence. He didn't say how, where, when, or whatever. So Prabhupada took these instructions to heart from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he made the effort. So he worked very, very diligently. He worked hard at translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, 2 and 3 into English, trying to sell it to get enough Lakshmi together so he could actually go overseas. And finally, when he did print these books, he was able to secure a ticket, and it just happened to be New York. Just if we want to go overseas, usually we get a brochure, right? We want to go to Bali or something, we'll get a brochure. Where are we going to? Oh, looks like a nice resort. We make some plans. We can go here or there, wherever, United States. We just don't land in the United States, scratch our head and think, where are we going to go to next? We always have a destination. So we have a plan. Prabhupada didn't have any such plan. He didn't even have any money. He was a sannyasi, and he was trying to spread Krishna consciousness in such a fashion, and he just relied on Krishna. So I think at this point, so this was his direct dependence upon Krishna, and then Krishna gave him everything, as we can see later on. So in our situation, that we are following in the footsteps of Prabhupada, and we see that if we follow diligently whatever we do, we give credit to Krishna. Sometimes that might go astray because the material energy is very, very strong, just as says here, one should not be puffed up because he's entrusted with certain executive work. So we did see that after Srila Prabhupada, when he entrusted his intimate disciples to carry on his work, and they were very, very successful at it, then the modes of material nature began to creep in a little bit, and they become influenced by the modes. And as a result of that, they actually lost their ability to carry out their duties in Krishna consciousness, because Maya is very, very strong. She just, she only needs a little opportunity and she works her way in. It's just like the ordinary living entities who are very proud of their activities. They're actually thinking that they're in control. So sometimes we sort of, if you compare yourself to executive out there and you're in control, but actually executives under the control of Maya, just like we have in the Bhagavad Gita. We have Maya's got like a puppeteer, and she's got everybody dancing on these strings. You've seen that picture in the Bhagavad Gita? It's like the three modes of material nature dancing according to the modes. So we have to be very careful. If we're acting Krishna conscious, we're directly under the influence of Krishna, so we're under the influence of the divine energy. And then Maya can't do her work and get into our psyche. So we have had so many different experiences, so much history in there, and we can learn from this and just be very, very astute, be careful how we tread on the path of Krishna consciousness. I'll finish the verse here because I really want to read a few pages from Srila Prabhupada here. This is from Lifetime in Preparation. You all seen this book? This is a series, Srila Prabhupada's series, Prabhupada Leelamrita. Actually, Mukunda Maharaj started reading this book to us in 1981 when it first came out. He first came to Australia and he had this Leelamrita. We didn't even have it at that point. It wasn't published. They was reading excerpts from us in class, so that was very ecstatic. So this is the first one, and the last chapter is called The Dream Come True because it talked about Srila Prabhupada in his early days when he was initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he got the instruction, okay, take the message to the Western world. So he always thought about that, and then when he took sannyas in 1954, he began to really focus on that. He went to Vrindavan and he started to translate the books. Srimad Bhagavatam first canto into English. First canto came out, second canto came out, and it was always a struggle to get them printed. And when he had them printed, then he had to distribute them. So I will just start from here. So it's just before his voyage. Bhaktivedanta Swami returned to Delhi, pursuing the usual avenues of book selling and looking for whatever opportunity might arise. And to his surprise, he was contacted by the Ministry of External Affairs and informed that his no objection certificate for going to the US was ready. Since he had not instigated any proceeding for leaving the country, Bhaktivedanta Swami had to inquire from the ministry. So, of course, it's Bhaktivedanta Swami at that point in time because Prabhupada came a little bit later and it was a name that was given to him by his disciples later on when he initiated them. So Bhaktivedanta Swami had to inquire from the ministry about what had happened. They showed him the statutory declaration form signed by Mr. Gopal Agarwal of Butler, Pennsylvania. Mr. Agarwal solemnly declared that he would bear the expenses of Bhaktivedanta Swami during his stay in the US. Now, this is Srila Prabhupada speaking. Whatever the correspondence was there between the father and son, I do not know. I simply asked him, why don't you ask your son Gopal to sponsor? And now, after 3 or 4 months, the no objection certificate was sent from the Indian consulate in New York to me. He had already sponsored my arrival there for 1 month, and all of a sudden I got the paper. At his father's request, Gopal Agarwal had done as he had done for several other sadhus, none of whom ever gone to America. We have to understand here also that Bhaktisiddhanta sent other sadhus to London and whatever, and they were all paid for. But here is Prabhupada, he is not being sponsored by anybody or being paid for by any of his godbrothers or peers. He's just getting a token sponsorship there for 1 month from Gopal Agarwal. It was just a formality, something to satisfy his father. Gopal had requested a form from the Indian consulate in New York, obtained a statement from his employer certifying his monthly salary, gotten a letter from the bank showing his balance of April 1965, and the form notarized. It had been stamped and approved in New York and sent to Delhi. Now Bhaktivedanta Swami had a sponsor, but he still needed a passport, visa, P-form and travel fare. Passport was not difficult to obtain. Krishna Pandit helped, and by June 10th had his passport. Carefully penned his address at the Radha Krishna Temple in Chippiwada. So Chippiwada's in Delhi, and we had a grand opening of Chippiwada. The ISKCON devotees bought that because that's where the printing went on for the books. And he wrote his father's name, Gaur Mohan Dev. He asked Krishna Pandit also to pay for his going abroad, but Krishna Pandit refused, thinking it against Hindu principles for a sadhu to go abroad, and also very expensive. With his passport and sponsorship papers, Bhaktivedanta Swami went to Bombay, not to sell his books or raise funds for printing. He wanted a ticket for America. Again, he tried approaching Sumati Maharaji. He showed his sponsorship papers. She's the one that owns all the ships. to a secretary, Mr. Choksi, who was impressed and went to Mrs. Maharaji on his behalf. "The Swami from Vrindavan is back," he told her. "He has published his book on your donation. He has a sponsor and he wants to go to America. He wants you to send him on a Scindia ship." Mrs. Maharaji said no. Swami was too old to go to the United States and expect to accomplish anything. As Mr. Choksi conveyed to him Mrs. Maharaji's words, Bhaktivedanta Swami listened disapprovingly. She wanted him to stay in India and complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why go to the States? Finish the job here. But Bhaktivedanta Swami was fixed on going. He told Mr. Choksi that he should convince Mrs. Maharaji. He coached Mr. Choksi in what he should say. "I find this gentleman very inspired to go to the States and preach something to the people there." But when he told Mrs. Maharaji, she again said, "No. Swami was not healthy. It would be too cold there. He might not be able to come back." She doubted whether he would be able to accomplish much there. People in America were not so cooperative and they'll probably not listen to him. Exasperated with Mr. Choksi's ineffectiveness, Bhaktivedanta Swami demanded a personal interview. It was granted, and the grey-haired, determined Bhaktivedanta Swami presented his emphatic request. "Please give me one ticket." Srimati Maharaj was concerned. "Swamiji, you're too old. You're taking this responsibility. Do you think it's all right?" "No," he assured the lifted, a doubting daughter. "It is all right. But you know what my secretaries think? They say Swamiji's going to die there." Bhaktivedanta made a face as if to dismiss a foolish rumour. Again he insisted she give him a ticket. "All right," she said. "Get your P form and I'll make an arrangement to send you by our ship." Bhaktivedanta Swami smiled at her officers, past her amazed and sceptical clerks. A P form, another necessity for an Indian national who wants to leave the country, is a certificate given by the State Bank of India. That would take a while, and he also did not yet have a youth visa. He needed to pursue these government permissions in Bombay, but he had no place to stay. So Mrs. Maharaji agreed to let him reside in the Scindia colony, a compound of apartments for employees of the Scindia company. He stayed in a small, unfurnished apartment with only his trunk and typewriter. The resident Scindia employees all knew well that Mrs. Maharaji was sending him to the West, and some of them became interested in his cause. They were impressed. Although he was so old, he was going abroad to preach. He was a special sadhu, scholar. They heard from him how he was taking hundreds of copies of his books with him, but no money. He became a celebrity in the Scindia colony. Various families brought him rice, sabji and fruit. They brought so much that he could not eat it all. And he mentioned this to Mr. Choksi. "Just accept it and distribute it," Mr. Choksi advised. Bhaktivedanta Swami then began giving remnants of his food to children. Some of the older residents gathered to hear him as he read and spoke from Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhaktivedanta Swami's apartment shared a roofed-in veranda with Mr. Nagarajan, the Scindia office workers, and his wife. I won't read what Mrs. Nagarajan said. Every day he would go try get his visa and P-form as quickly as possible, selling his books, seeking contracts and support for his future of Srimad Bhagavatam publishing. Mr. Nagaraj tried help using telephone directory. He made a list of wealthy business and professional men who were Vaishnavas who might be inclined to assist. Bhaktivedanta Swami's neighbour at Scindia colony observed him coming home dead tired in the evening. He would sit quietly, perhaps feeling morose. Some neighbours thought, but after a while would sit up, rejuvenate and start writing again. Mr. Nagaraj, his temperament was very adjustable and homely. Our friends would offer a few rupees. He would say, "All right, it will help." He used to walk from our colony to Andheri station. It is 2 kilometres, and he used to go there without taking a bus because he had no money. Bhaktivedanta Swami had a page printed titled "My Mission," and he would show it to influential men in his attempts to get further financing for Srimad Bhagavatam. Printed statement proposed that God consciousness was the only remedy for evils of modern materialistic society. Despite scientific advancement and material comforts, there was no peace in the world. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, glory of India, must be spread all over the world. Mrs. Maharaji asked Bhaktivedanta Swami if he would read Srimad Bhagavatam to her in the evening. He agreed. She sent her car for him at 6 o'clock each evening, and they would sit in the garden. He would recite and comment on the Srimad Bhagavatam. His backing by Scindia and his sponsorship in the US were a strong presentation. With the help of people, Scindia obtained his visa on July the 28th, 1965. P-form proceedings went slowly and threatened to be a last insurmountable object. Following Mrs. Maharaji's instruction, the secretary, Mr. Choksi, made final arrangements for Bhaktivedanta Swami. So Srila Prabhupada went to the bank and he approached them, and he had Krishna in his heart, and he convinced all the clerks that they should give him that P-form. So therefore, Mr. Choksi made final arrangements for Bhaktivedanta Swami. Since he had no warm clothes, Mr. Choksi took him to buy a wool jacket and other woolen clothes. Mr. Choksi spent about 250 rupees on new clothes, including some new dhotis, which is quite amazing because Srila Prabhupada only went to New York with 40 rupees. At Bhaktivedanta Swami's request, Mr. Choksi printed 500 copies of a small pamphlet containing the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya, an advertisement for Srimad Bhagavatam in the context of an advertisement for the Scindia Steamship Company. Mr. Choksi asked him, why couldn't you go earlier? Why don't you start something in Bombay or Delhi or Vrindavan? I was teasing him also. You are interested in seeing the States. Therefore you want to go. All Swamis want to see the States. And you want to enjoy life there. He was teasing him. And he said, what have I got to see? I've finished my life. But sometimes he was hot-tempered. He used to get angry at me for the delays. What is this nonsense, he would say. Then I would understand. He's getting angry now. Sometimes he would say, oh, Mrs. Maharaji has still not signed this paper? She says, come back tomorrow. We will talk tomorrow. What is this? Why this daily going back? He would get angry. Then I would say, you can sit here. But he would say, how long do I have to sit? He would become impatient. Finally, Mrs. Maharaji scheduled a place for him on one of his ships, the Jaladuta, which was sailing from Calcutta on August the 13th. She had made certain that he would travel on a ship as Captain understood the needs of the vegetarian and the Brahmana. So Bhaktivedanta Swami arrived in Calcutta only a few days before the Jaladuta's departure. Although he had lived much of his life in the city, he had nowhere to stay. It was as he had written in his Vrindavan Bhajan, I have my wife's sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but they have no money, so they have fruitless glory. Although in this city he had been carefully nurtured as a child, those early days were gone forever. Where have my loving father and mother gone to now? Where are my elders? And who were my folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family is a list of names. Out of the hundreds of people in Calcutta whom Bhaktivedanta Swami knew, he chose to call on Mr. Sisir Bhattacharya, flamboyant Kirtan singer he had met the year before at the governor's house in Lucknow. Mr. Bhattacharya was not a relative, not a disciple, not even a close friend, but he was willing to help. So he needed a place to stay, would like to give some lectures. Mr. Bhattacharya immediately began to arrange a few private meetings at friends' home. He would sing and Bhaktivedanta Swami would speak. The day before his departure, Bhaktivedanta Swami travelled to nearby Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Then he returned to Calcutta. He was ready. He had only a suitcase, an umbrella, and a supply of dry cereal. He did not know if he would find what to eat in America. Perhaps it would be only meat. If so, he was prepared to live on boiled potatoes and cereal. His main baggage, several trunks of his books, was being handled separately by Scindia Cargo, 200 3-volume sets. The very thought of the books gave him confidence. So it's 200 3-volume sets. It's quite amazing. When the day came for him to leave, he needed that confidence. He was making a momentous break with his previous life, and he was dangerously old and not in strong health. He was going to an unknown and probably unwelcoming country. To be poor and unknown in India is one thing. Even these Kali Yuga days, when Indian leaders were rejecting Vedic culture and imitating the West, there was still India. There was still remains of Vedic civilization. He had seen millionaires, governors, the prime ministers simply by showing up at their doors and waiting. Sannyasi was respected. Srimad Bhagavatam was respected. But in America it would be different. There would be no one, a foreigner. There was no tradition of sadhus, no temples, no free ashrams. But when he thought of the books he was bringing transcendental knowledge in English, he became confident. When he met someone in America, he would give him a flyer. Srimad Bhagavatam, India's message of peace and goodwill. It was August the 13th, just a few days before Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna. The next day would be his own 70th birthday. During these last days, he had been in Vrindavan for Janmashtami. Many Vrindavan residents would never leave there. They were old and peace in Vrindavan. Bhaktivedanta Swami was also concerned he might die in Vrindavan. That's why all the Vaishnava sadhus and widows had taken vows not to leave Mathura, because to die in Vrindavan was the perfection of life. And Lord Chaitanya, and Indra tradition was that sannyasis should not cross the ocean and go to the land of the Malechas. But beyond all that was the desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and his desire was non-different from that of Lord Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted that chanting Hare Krishna would be known in every town, village of the world. So, Mr. Bhadracharya Bhaktivedanta Swami took a taxi down to the Calcutta port. Bhaktivedanta Swami was carrying a Bengali copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he intended to read during the crossing. Somehow we'd be able to cook on board, or if not, he could starve. Whatever Krishna desired, he checked out his essentials: passenger, ticket, passport, visa, P form, sponsor's address, found it was happening. Sure, Papa, with great difficulty I got out of the country, some way or other, by Krishna's grace. I got out so I could spread Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Otherwise, to remain in India, it was not possible. I wanted to start a movement in India, but it was not at all encouraged. Black cargo ship, small and weathered, was moored at the dockside. Gangway leading from the dock to the ship's deck. Indian merchant sailors curiously eyed the elderly saffron-dressed sadhu as he spoke last words to his companion in the taxi, and left him and walked determinedly to the boat. For thousands of years, Krishna Bhakti had been known in India, not outside except in twisted, faithless reports by foreigners. And the only swamis to have reached America had been non-devotees, Mayavadi impersonalists. But now Krishna was sending Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami as his emissary. Mr. Bhattacharya, he was alone, a lone fighter. When he left, there was no one on the shore. They're bidding goodbye, no friends, no supporter, no disciple, nobody. Even if you call me, I was not a disciple of his. I was a disciple of somebody else. So I was not his follower, but due to shared love, I had very much respect for him. So I was the only person standing on the shore to say goodbye to him. No one was with me, and I could not know it was such an important thing. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much. Oh, glory. Yes, quickly.
Thank you. Just clarification on Prabhupada. He's a Vibhuti incarnation or scheduled? He's not a scheduled incarnation, so he's not Shakta Vesha about his vibhuti. I remember one Swami when he was here, he mentioned that. So sometimes I hear Prabhupada disciples say that he's a Shakta
I don't think we're sort of qualified to make that call that is Shakta Avatar. I don't know, usually Shakta Avatars are predicted in some shastras, but we certainly, the devotee can step up to the front, to the fore, so if he's a declared Shakta Avatar or not, he's acting in the capacity of an empowered, because there's actually feats like what he achieved are just extraordinary feats that no one could repeat. So we know him as the founder Acharya, and that's just someone who's really been able to extraordinarily get the mercy of Krishna. Shakta Avatar might come later. I don't think we're sort of in a capacity to actually declare that. Sometimes, like when in other places like the Pope, he dies, and then maybe 100 years later somebody puts a motion forward to sanctify and call him a saint. So maybe that might happen in the future. At this point in time, we just see Prabhupada's the founder Acharya head and shoulders above everybody else, because he carried out the executive work of Krishna under the complete shelter of the divine protection of Krishna. And we've found that in the past, others who have tried to repeat this have stumbled and some are rather fallen into Maya's trap one way or another, because they misassume that they're the doer. So this is Prabhupada's glory. So,
because I read somewhere, I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that more Senapati Bhakta, so that my great general will come. So that was a kind of a prediction of
Senapati Bhakta, yeah. So that's prediction there. Yeah, what can I say? All glory, Srila Prabhupada.